Welcome back. There's growing national attention on Wisconsin's race for U.S. Senate. The Cook Political Report now moving that race from leans Democrat to a toss-up classification between Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin and Republican Eric Hovde.
Following off of the Cook Political, recent polling still shows that some 50% of women, 49% of independents view you unfavorably. What do you do in the next 4 weeks to change that?
Well, look, when they run attack ads all day long saying that I want a national abortion ban or saying things that are just factually inaccurate, of course, they're going to suppress my opinion polls. But, continue on the message, continuing talking about the issues that matter, like the cost of people's groceries, the cost of housing, healthcare, the problems in healthcare. And as long as I'm continuing to address those issues, I think, my race will continue to move in a good direction.
Baldwin and Hovde will meet Friday for their first and likely only debate hosted by the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association. Baldwin, who debated 3 times in 2018 and 2012, rejected other debate offers this cycle, including a statewide debate hosted by us, WISN TV. With that, let's bring in Montana Senator Steve Daines, chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, tasked with winning the majority for Republicans. Senator, good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to join you.
Let's start right there, coming off what Eric Hovde told us this past week. What are your internals? What are you seeing on the ground? How close is this race here in Wisconsin?
Well, it's razor thin. What we're seeing right now is Eric Hovde has a lot of momentum in Wisconsin. These polls have tightened up, but we're seeing Wisconsin right now as a tied race between Hovde and Baldwin. We're seeing the same thing on the presidential, where President Trump is seeing more momentum, with Kamala Harris being quite unpopular in Wisconsin. So we're seeing just a razor-thin race, but the momentum that we've seen shifting now towards Eric Hovde.
Senator, there is a pretty hot Senate race in your home state of Montana. Right now, Tim Sheehy is currently leading Democratic Senator Jon Tester. When you talk about trying to win the majority in the Senate 3 weeks out, what are the most important states that you're watching?
Yeah, well, certainly states like Montana are very important. West Virginia is over. We're going to win West Virginia. Both sides have really conceded that, so that's +1. Montana, Ohio. And I'll tell you, Wisconsin, these they call the blue wall states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. These are all now tied toss-up races. And so we look at Wisconsin now as a very probable state. And with Hovde running a great race, he's a great candidate, a father, grandfather, business guy. He brings a lot of assets to the job in Washington, D.C. And so we think we've got a real good chance there in Wisconsin as well.
And to that, Senator, is there a shift in resources and attention from the NRSC in recent weeks now coming into Wisconsin in this final stretch?
Yeah, you've seen that actually nationally. Because of Eric Hovde's strengths in Wisconsin, you're seeing more and more resources going into Wisconsin. That's true in our case for the NRSC. It's true of other outside groups. But we saw what Ron Johnson did. You go back in his 2016 race, he was behind by double digits coming into that election, and he ended up winning. And so Wisconsin can be a difficult race to poll. It tends to underpoll where Republicans are. These Trump voters aren't really interested in talking to pollsters, but they're going to show up and they're going to vote. They're going to vote for President Trump. They're going to vote for Eric Hovde.
Let's talk about money quickly. I'm sure what everyone wants to talk about in these final weeks. A little inside baseball on what Politico reported recently, that the NRSC is canceling independent expenditure buys and going toward hybrid ads, which we've seen here in Wisconsin. First, I'm curious, is that happening? And as we sit 3 weeks out, do you guys have enough money?
Yeah, we've set records actually in the support we're seeing at the NRSC, which we're very thankful for. But these ads you talked about, that we can invest in races and supporting these great candidates, they pay a lower rate by law. The candidate has a lower rate, and so we're able to take advantage of those more favorable rates. I know folks in Wisconsin, like folks in Montana, are tired of seeing all these ads, all these attack ads. I know one of the good things about having the election is the next day, the TVs and the radios will be free again to get back to regular programming.
Senator, on the flip side of that, the Senate Leadership Fund is pouring nearly $68 million into the battlegrounds, including $17 million in Wisconsin. How do you win this race with independents and with women who still view Eric Hovde unfavorably? Yeah,
well, I'll tell you, when they hear Eric Hovde's story, as a father, husband to Sharon, grandfather of 3, I think there's a real appeal. The challenge you have in political races is you have all these attack ads that try to define these candidates as somebody who they really aren't. And the more you get to know Eric Hovde personally, the more Wisconsin residents are going to like him. It's just a matter of him getting his message out. He was outspent in this election early on. Now the resources are coming in here where Eric can get his message out. I think that's what's going to be key here for him to win in Wisconsin.
If Republicans win in Montana, as the polling shows at this point, is that over for the majority? Does it matter what happens in any of these other states?
Well, I think if we do in Montana, if we do, which it looks like we probably will, that's the 51st seat for the Senate majority control, because I think we're going to be fine in places like Texas and Florida. We're keeping an eye on those races, but Ted Cruz is running a great race. Rick Scott's running a great race in Florida. But I tell you, when you think about the future of what's at stake right now in the country, it's the future of the United States Supreme Court, the future of the tax policies. There's a $4 trillion tax increase coming if the Democrats control the U.S. Senate.
And bringing it back to Wisconsin, broadly speaking, what is Eric Hovde's biggest challenge in beating Senator Baldwin?
I think it's getting his message out. He's under a lot of attack at the moment with some of these ads. I saw one of Eric's ads he had kind of making fun of the attack ads. And I think sometimes you need a little humor in these races. I think Eric's doing a good job with that. But as long as he gets his message out, I think that's what's on the ballot. Are you better off or not 4 years ago? I think most folks in Wisconsin would say they're not.
3 weeks out, Senator, perhaps we'll see you in the battleground state of Wisconsin before Election Day. Montana Senator Steve Daines. Senator, hey, thank you so much.
Glad to join you.
Coming up, the political game plan. The Milwaukee Bucks with a big voter registration push will bring you inside, plus the risk and efforts by the team and the league ahead of Election Day.